Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast, friends. Today we're talking all about emotions, and I invited our amazing, wonderful, beautiful fertility confidence method mindset coach, Haunani, in to talk to you all on the podcast all about working through our emotions and actually what can suppressed emotions have. How can they have that physical effect on your body? We ended up having a really beautiful conversation, even, sharing some personal stories with our own journey through self-care and spirituality and emotional resiliency and emotional strength. And really, this was an amazing kind of like full circle moment for me. I feel really just starting to talk about out loud, how much I've noticed that my, childhood, I guess, teenager years, like I did not grow up in an emotionally capable family. And my family was wonderful. I love them to death, but we didn't talk about, how we're feeling. I don't even really remember ever, seeing my parents with, sadness and things like that. Other emotions, yes, but we just didn't talk about that stuff. And so, it's taken me a journey of many, many years to finally come to terms with the fact that like, I don't have to hold all that in, and that, a lot of my burnout and cortisol issues and hormonal imbalances and gut issues likely do trickle down and have some barrier of root cause inside emotional instability. That makes me sound crazy, but I'm not. But I think a lot of us can relate to this. I love how I like laugh after I say that. It's like I'm trying to convince myself. I think a lot of us grew up in these households, and like the more and more that I talk about it, I think the more and more I realize just that this was our generation, right? We didn't share our feelings. It wasn't okay to cry. It was a lot of stop, don't do that. And I even catch myself with my kids, just being like, can you just stop? Like, you're fine, right? And then going through the motions of, apologizing and helping to work through and realizing that no, just stop, don't cry is basically teaching them to shut down, to not share, and that those emotions aren't okay. And so Haunani and I had a really beautiful conversation around what can suppressed emotions start to look like. How do we open up that box and really start to explore that for ourselves, particularly through the difficult journey that is infertility. So let me share a little bit about Haunani, because she's not only our wonderful mindset coach inside FCM, she helps all of our clients really work through these exact pieces. And I think I mentioned in the recording, I can't remember or not, I definitely mentioned it in a recording that's coming up later, around how every time we increase the mindset support, we expand the mindset resources, we add more tools to this toolkit for our clients, the more pregnancies that we have. And it's such a intriguing and profound change that makes me keep going. How can we push the envelope further? What deeper supports can we offer our clients? Because yes, the physical body is so incredibly important, but the emotional body is also right up there. And I think if you've been in this journey for any length of time, truly, I don't care if you've been trying for 3 months or if you've been trying for 3 years. When you decide you want to bring a baby into the family, you want that baby now, not 6 months down the road, not 12 months down the road, and certainly not multiple years down the road. And so navigating those feelings of grief, of disappointment, of worry, of anxiety, of fear that are also really much intertwined with joy and excitement and wonder. Like, how complicated is that? It's incredibly complex. And one of the big things I think a lot of our clients really step into their power when we're talking and building emotional resiliency is when we can come to terms and acceptance with the fact that both polarities are allowed to exist together. You can be grateful and excited and a little scared and a little friggin' frustrated. You're allowed to feel both things. One doesn't necessarily negate the other. And that's really where the beauty starts to lie in terms of how to manage, work through, and process your emotions, because it's no longer about ignoring everything that comes into our lives. And sometimes we're doing this with positive emotions too, right? I shouldn't be happy. I should be sad. This isn't working for me. I shouldn't feel joy. Now I feel guilty for being happy. We need to work through all the complexities of that. So Haunani is a certified mindset and holistic health and life coach. She lives and practices in the beautiful state of Hawaii. And I'm super jealous of her. When we brought Haunani onto the team, I was like, oh my gosh, I tried so hard to convince my family last year to move to Hawaii, even just for 6 months, not permanently. And I mean, it was a bit of a pipe dream, let's be honest. It was actually before we decided to build this house. Somehow I ended up further north in Southern Ontario, where there's more snow, more wind, more cold. And I feel like I just went completely in the opposite direction of what my brain was intentionally planning, which makes no sense. And so when she reached out for the mindset coaching position, and we met, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like you are such a beautiful and perfect fit. And selfishly, one day I'm going to come and visit you. And I expect you to show me all the cool non-touristy things. So I just love that about Haunani, and how that kind of, like, from a personal standpoint, it feels very full circle for me when I've never been. So I live vicariously through her Instagram stories every day. She's a background in integrative nutrition, a bachelor's in food science and human nutrition and dietetics. She's qualified in a wide variety of modalities, which is why we brought her into FCM. She does hypnotherapy, NLP, EFT, energetic encoding, some different somatic techniques. She does meditation. And then she also has this beautiful background in nutrition and women's health as well. And she propelled herself through this journey after suffering from years of anxiety, depression, alcohol abuse, digestive disorders, hormonal health issues. She healed herself through using her own holistic modalities, through the power of her mind, using her nutrition degree. And now she's in turn sharing her wonderful, beautiful gifts with the world and with other women, and how to reprogram their subconscious mind, which is so, so beautiful of her to offer that out to the world for us. She does so much good for us in FCM, and the women that she generally works with outside as well experience more confidence, more emotional intelligence. They have less anxiety, less stress, less just negative, self-sabotaging habits, which I think is so important to work through and understand, like, why am I making these more self-sabotaging decisions? But she also helps women heal their hormones, balance their hormones, heal their gut, and just increase their own sort of like feminine power and belief in themselves. And she's incredibly passionate about everything that she does, which is such a light in this life. And she really, truly does believe that all women have the inherent power to transform to their highest selves and transmute that emotional and physical pain, release the stress, release past traumas, and just live an authentic and truth in the rest of their lives. Feel good about themselves. Be the best version of themselves. So without further ado, I give you our wonderful conversation that could have probably gone on for hours, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, Haunani. How are you?
I'm good, Kelsey. Thanks for having me on the pod.
I feel like I've been waiting, since we started chatting, to have you come and share your wisdom with the masses. So I'm happy we finally made it happen.
Me too. It's so fun. I love podcasts.
Why don't you share with our listeners just a little bit about you?
Sure. Okay. So my name is Haunani Ramil. I'm a holistic health and life coach. I'm also certified in a few modalities in mindset, such as hypnosis, EFT. And I use that in my practice to help women realign their energy, release emotional suppression, have relationships that they love, create habits that they love, And the pairing with that, with the symptoms of releasing PMS and bloating. And those are pretty much, how I want to help women to uh, create a life that they love in terms of aligning their energy and really tapping into their own natural rhythm and their own intuition.
And you offer all of your beautiful support for our clients inside Fertility Confidence Method. So they have gotten a chance to get to know you. So I'm happy to have you on here and specifically have a conversation around this concept. And you kind of said in your intro there with the connection between mindset and the physical symptoms that you might be experiencing. So can you just elaborate on that idea a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, everything is connected, so mind, body, spirit. And I've definitely gone on my own personal journey of all of that and experience of life in terms of just following the status quo or following like how, society kind of brings you up along the lines and then forgetting my own intuitive nature or forgetting to tap into what my body is actually telling me, right? And I think um just knowing and learning how all of those things tie together to create a beautiful life, to create like a life that you really feel fulfilled in, makes such a huge difference, especially when we end up having physical symptoms because we're not fully aligned in those areas.
So let's talk a little bit about this like concept of suppressed emotions and how they manifest physically. Because when we, you know, connect this back to the fertility space, so commonly we hear from our clients this idea of I don't want to get my hopes up. I just am going to kind of act as if it's never going to happen. And they're sort of putting these walls up, or they're, not working through the grief that's happening cycle after negative cycle after negative cycle. And we talk about this like grief backpack and processing the emotions a lot in
Yeah.
FCM and moving through that. And I think a lot of times, even, thinking about the program and how we've worked through and worked in some of our modalities, like we haven't even as a company done a very good job of connecting how this actually can manifest from a physical symptom standpoint either.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you hit it right there. It's like it has to be felt, like emotions have to be felt. Like they are emotional health is so crucial to physical health. And that's where I was talking about mind, body, and spirit. So the emotions that we um have, right? They're necessary. We have this gift of emotions. Are they are messages to our body. They are messages to us to look into life further, to connect further with other humans, right? Like that's just a nice, that's like another level of being human, right? We have emotions and we need them to survive, but we also need to learn how to harness them, how to actually use them for our whole health, like our body health, like our physical health as well. So
Yeah.
um it's really learning to feel those emotions. And what I was saying in the beginning, it's like in society, we're not necessarily taught this. I
Mhm.
think it was, I don't know, it was the 80s where it was like everything was just so macho and everything was like, don't feel like just keep going, be so strong. And which is great, right? We want to have a strong mindset, but we also want to learn how to process the emotions that do come up, because if we store them, they're gonna manifest and have to go somewhere, because emotions are energy, right? It is a non-physical form of energy. And I won't get so spiritual or so like um in the science world of energy, but so much of this world is non-physical energy. We see only so much, right, with our eyes. but so much of it is felt. So learning how to feel our emotions, learning that it needs to go somewhere, it needs to be processed, right? So let me kind of dive into how that kind of works, right? So
Yeah.
when we feel an emotion, so I'm going to break it down a little bit. So when we feel an emotion in our body, it triggers a neuropeptide. It triggers like a chemical right within our body and within our mind. And then that chemical, that protein messenger, which ends up being hormones, right? It's that neurotransmitter that gets sent through our body to give our body information on what to do, how to react, how to basically regulate certain body systems, right? So, for instance, if you're having an emotion of anxiety, and that's causing stress, that's going to send chemical messages to your body of cortisol. It's going to bump up cortisol, that chemical messenger in our body. And if we aren't processing that and doing it in healthy ways, then it's going to end up getting stored in our body, and that usually ends up physically manifesting as pains in certain areas of our body, feeling muscle aches. It could be different for everybody. It's not across the board. It could be, well, let me just talk about for women. So mostly for women, they end up physically manifesting as maybe headaches or areas within the body for PMS, like targeting those female organs, um, and it doesn't actually support the flow, the lung, what am I trying to say? That neural flow to the body, because creating a baby or creating infertility is kind of a secondary health function, right?
Right.
And
It's not like breathing.
yeah, it's not like breathing, right? It's like
If only it
breathe,
was that easy.
right? It's like breathing and your heart rate. So when you're having stress and cortisol, it's like, okay, what can we do? It's going to send all your energy and blood flow to those areas to keep you surviving, right? Not
Yeah.
thriving. And the thriving part is the fertility part, the creation part, right? So that's
Yeah.
kind of how it flows there.
Totally. It's so like hearing you talk about this so reminds me how like so I'm 33 and I feel truly like in the last couple of years I'm just starting to acknowledge the fact that I wasn't taught nor did I know how to actually process and express emotions. And for me it was always just like this just is the way I am. This is just who I am. I'm like stone cold Kelsey. Like there's
So
no penetrating this exterior, nothing. Everyone's like, how do you do it? I'm like, nothing bothers me. I'm like a cool cucumber. Um, and my children, bless their souls, have definitely like opened me up emotionally and
right.
digging
They did
into
that.
my, right. Yeah. So lovely. And digging into my human design and seeing there's so many parts of myself that I haven't embraced and I can trickle it back to I had a great childhood, no complaints, loving parents, but like not emotional. Like we just weren't an emotional household. I mean, other than maybe like anger, but like we didn't talk about these things. You didn't talk about how you were feeling. If you were upset and you were crying, it was like you'll be fine. Stop crying, like these are the memories that I have. And I'm sure that wasn't how it always was, but this is what is stuck with me is like, those are bad. Having those feelings don't serve a purpose. Just get over it. And I
Yeah.
carried that through my teens and like early depression and my 20s. And now I'm just finally at a place where I'm like, emotions are not bad. Like having feelings is what makes us, human
Yeah.
in a sense, right? Like this
Yeah.
is a part of our superpower. And when we circle it back to the fertility piece, when we're just suppressing that, when we're not allowing ourselves to accept and acknowledge both the hard, the sad, the frustration, the grief, but also I find women struggle to accept the happy, the joy, the gratitude as well, right? Because they're
Mhm.
just so thick, deep into it that it's like there's no space for any emotion. And the
Yeah.
reality is like, I mean, everyone listening, I feel like knows me well enough to know now that like, yes, we have to work on the physical body, very science oriented, very evidence oriented. But the reality is we can't ignore this piece of the puzzle, especially if nothing's working, especially if we haven't made any progress. Like we have to start allowing ourselves to open up to this conversation of, what else can I be doing to support my body that isn't another pill, powder, or potion? What else can I be doing to support my body that doesn't actually involve me cutting out a food group? And I think this is where this topic of like mindset and mental health and working through and processing the emotions really comes into play.
Absolutely. 100%. I think if I were to go back a little bit, and restart my journey, if I had the where, whatever, I
Yeah.
can't go back, but
Hindsight, right? If only.
hindsight, yeah. Going back and just looking at the journey, I did so much of the physical part first,
Yeah.
whereas if I had just started with the self-love, if I had just started with the feeling and learning to cope in healthy ways, so much of those things, the physical parts, the physical even actions that I was taking would have transformed the
Mhm.
result. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have been in such high stress if I was focusing, oh, what am I eating? What am I not eating? What am I not working out and or suppressing, like I would suppress emotions with food, alcohol, drugs, things like that I learned in my childhood. Of course,
Mhm.
weren't great examples, but that's what I saw and I subconsciously picked up on them. I wasn't
Right.
consciously wanting to be like, well, let me go drink a bottle of wine
Yeah.
and
It
drink
was
away
just
my
how it was
sorrow.
just how it was modeled to,
It was
same with me,
how I
right?
was
Like it was just how it
modeled.
was modeled to me
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
like, you had a bad day, you had a bottle of wine. You had a good day, you celebrated with a bottle of
A
wine. Like
bottle.
it did not matter how the day went. Wine was how you capped her off.
Yes.
And this is a really good segue into this concept that you brought up at the beginning about like forming good habits. And I've definitely noticed that personally with like my own mindset journey, my own self-love journey, and digging into this piece for myself that, and I really didn't actually think about this until I was sort of going through how I wanted our conversation to go before we sat down here. But I noticed earlier today that for me, it's actually been easier for me to change and form new healthy habits since I have done this work on myself. Whereas, granted, I'll also sort of give the asterisks of like, I'm now, 4 years out of my postpartum period. Like, it's not fair really to compare like now to 3 years ago when I was in the thick of it with two kids under three. But
Yeah.
the reality is that as I've gone through this journey, it's been easier and easier and easier for me to say, like, that's no longer serving me. And instead of fighting the habit change, actually leaning into the discomfort of it and just seeing how it fits, like,
Mhm.
does this actually feel good? Like my intuition is telling me. And a good example of this is I haven't been drinking. And I by no means, had a drinking problem, nor did I have the tolerance to even really drink a lot since I had the children. But I slowly over the last couple of years just been getting more and more signals and like intuitive hits that this was not a habit that was serving my body. And the more I didn't listen, the more I felt that physically. I would have
Mhm.
2 glasses of wine and feel like absolute trash. I would have a couple beers at dinner and throw up, like things that
Yeah.
shouldn't happen, and be like dying for days and not, I not sleep, like just where,
Right.
when I was in that mindset, I was like, this is so ridiculous. Like, and at first my mental state was like, just drink more and build up your tolerance and you'll be fine. Right. Like, here we go first, because it was uncomfortable for me
Mm-hmm.
to have this like sober, curious mindset. It was uncomfortable for
Mm-hmm.
me to think like, when we go to hang out with our friends, like, what am I going to do? Like, we always have a couple drinks. Like, that's just part of our nature. Like, that's just what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Summer is coming. Like, what am I going to do? Um, and finally in January, I was like, you know what? Like, I don't really give a fuck what other people think. Like,
Yeah.
my body doesn't feel well. And I just need to try this on for size. And the more I just actually worked on the mindset portion of that decision, the easier it became for me to just say to myself, like, let's just try this on and see how we feel. Sorry,
Yeah.
I went on a huge ramble about myself there, but I
No, that's
think
a
that
huge,
the piece of the habits is so important.
yeah, that's a huge piece. I loved how you just talked about like, this is how I'm feeling, and it's not feeling quite right. So it's like really connecting back to your body. And I think so many people are so disconnected
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
their body. So because they're just following what somebody else said or just doing what,
They've
society
always done.
they've always done. And
Yeah.
that's the thing too, when it comes to mindset and really learning your mind and the subconscious mind, is that the body and the mind is going to always want to do what's familiar,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Even if it feels like crap,
Yeah.
right? But if you're conscious and really tuned into your body and starting to feel that emotion or starting to feel that physical sensation and noticing this doesn't feel good and you're actually listening to it, then you can actually shift it and transform it into what is actually working well for you, because we are meant to evolve. We are creatures of evolution. Like, we are not meant to stay the same
Yeah.
human that we were in our 20s. you know?
I most certainly am not.
Yeah, me
I like
neither.
to be in bed at 7:30 p.m. So
Yes.
20-year-old Kelsey would be like, what are you doing? This is when you get up from nap time. Like, get started.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah. So
So
true.
So really leaning into those feelings, really leaning into the emotions, because they are your gift. They are your message. And when you take responsibility from that point, you are taking control of your health, you're taking control of your mental health, your emotional health, the the ripple effect that's just going to happen
Yeah.
around you, to your family,
Yeah.
your community, all of those.
Yeah. And it just takes like teeny tiny micro movements of you saying, like, how do I feel? What do I need in this moment? And actually paying attention. Like, we all have intuition. That's my belief. We all
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
strong intuition. It's
Yes.
whether or not you are connected enough to yourself to understand the cues that are coming from it. Not everyone's going to have this like booming voice in their head, like, don't have that drink. You're going to feel like garbage, right?
Yeah.
It can be very subtle
Yeah.
and
Most of the time it is.
yeah, or like
Yeah.
just patterns over time, right? Of being
Mhm.
able to kind of look back and be like, man, the last like few times we've gone out, like, I've really struggled the next
Mhm.
day. Like, what is this telling me? And we teach something with nutrition, specifically in FCM, and I've done this my whole career. Even like back in the day when I would, put people through elimination diets, and then they're like, okay, well, what next? And I'm like, well, now we make a mindful decision. I don't think you need to completely cut all these things out, or we'd run like food sensitivity testing. Like, I don't believe and subscribe to the notion that you need to completely eliminate all of this in order for you to be healthy. But
Mhm.
I do believe that you need to make mindful decisions around these things, where sometimes eating something that your body does not feel good with is actually going to serve a positive purpose. You're going to check in with yourself and say, yeah, you know what? I really want that right now. And the joy that that brings me is worth insert however you're going to feel. Right.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're going to say, you know what? Not worth it. And the reality is we don't listen. Like our bodies do this intuitively, but we're really, really good at ignoring it,
Yes.
either out of habit, out of societal pressure, out of the fact that we've never listened to our intuitive
Mhm.
body. And deepening that connection is only going to help you further understand, where do I go from here in my fertility journey?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So let's bring it back to fertility because that's a huge piece. So much of it is lifestyle, like you're saying, is like coming back to the simple awarenesses of what you're doing and then the lifestyle choices, the habits that you're making, because those are going to compound over time, right? It's like
Mhm.
the symptoms that you're having most likely did not just happen overnight. There's something
Right.
that you are doing over a period of time, something that you are eating or the way that you're processing your emotions or coping with your emotions. It was a build up to something that's like your body is telling you and trying to get your attention and be like,
Right.
hey, you have headaches now. This is
Yeah.
this is this
Here's
is
another one. Here's another sign for you.
yeah.
A bit
Yeah,
louder.
a bit louder. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And I did that. The self-sabotage of ignoring,
Yeah.
the body signs, of ignoring the
Yeah.
intuitive signs of this doesn't actually feel right. Are you actually following your truth?
Right. So true. So let's talk about I want to know how you recommend clients move through emotions. Because I think we can have a whole, long conversation around therapy, and we should all maybe probably everyone should be in therapy, I think, really, for one reason or another. But beyond that, beyond actually talking it out, or like CBT and or
Yeah.
EMDR and things like that, how else can we work on moving and processing our emotions?
Oh, let's go for this. Because we all have these tools to us and they are free, just
Yeah.
starting with the simple basics of getting still and journaling, like listening to yourself, because you're going to have thoughts. You're going to have all kinds of thoughts that come up all the time. But it's like, what are the ones that you're actually paying attention to? What are the ones that you're actually focusing on? And it's creating stillness in the body to actually hear your thoughts. And journaling is an amazing tool for that, and you don't have to necessarily um like it's just the tool to get things out of your mind, especially if you're having anxiety or if you're having overthinking and you're thinking about a bunch of things, like get it out,
Yeah.
like it doesn't need to take mental space. So really starting with, that space is amazing. Journaling, getting in nature, because nature is so, so healing for the body. It really brings you back to peace and calm, and it gives you that reflection of who you really are, like nature, you are nature.
Mhm.
So just coming back to the basics of those things in yourself and your body, um being around water, like plunging yourself in cold water to just realign the nerves, realign um the signals in your body so that you have that's just peace again, that calm, like because when we're in that fight or flight, like we are thrown off. We're in survival. We're not in the parasympathetic where we're going to be digesting and processing hormones and ready to procreate and just like be in pleasure also, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um so yoga is another amazing form because it includes mindset, like being present, really being present with where you are in your space, where you are in your mind, and then also using that physical energy of the breath and movement with yoga.
Mm-hmm. Totally. It's funny you're saying this and I'm like looking outside. It's sunny now, but in my head, I'm like, of course you say get out in nature. Like you live in one of the most beautiful climates. Like those of us that just got a snowstorm yesterday, like a freak snowstorm in our ND meeting this week. We were talking about this, how, like most of our ND clients are in and around Southern Ontario. And I was like, now's the time we got to start pushing those walks again, getting people outside, because like a lot of us have been hiding indoors for the last few months. And like,
Yeah.
I understand because I'm the same way. I drive my son to the bus in the summer. It's like an 8-minute walk, or in the winter. I mean, we walk in the summer because I'm actually not that pathetic, but in the cold, snowy winter, like it's also painful he climbs in the snowbank. So it takes like 3 times as long for us to get there. So everyone on the street drives. So I was like, fine, I'm just going to be that person. I'm going to drive with everybody else. But it severely cuts down on my like general day-to-day actual walking, because then I come back and I'll do my workout, then I come back and sit at my desk. So I've been like craving to get back out, and I'm like, Cole, it's not that cold. We're walking to the bus now. And he's like, oh, I love driving. So like on the days where it's sunny like this, I'm like, okay, we're back in, we're out getting some sunshine. Like it feels so good. And
Yes.
not everyone gets to enjoy that all year.
Yes. I hear
All
you.
year
I hear you
round.
on that. Let me give you some mindset or some hacks though, because
Yeah, please.
yeah, because like you don't necessarily like, because your mind, right? And I'll jump into meditation maybe a little bit after this, but
Mhm.
your mind doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined.
Right.
So maybe when you're in those winter months is putting on something on YouTube that is, you can actually visually see yourself, or visually see like nature, like waterfalls, or maybe even just like a fireplace burning,
Mhm.
that really does something to your
Yeah.
mind, that really does something to your vagus nerve, right? That's also the longest healing nerve in the body. So
Great idea.
even bringing in plants into your home, pictures of plants on your home, like visualization is such a huge component. Also, and a good hack, if you can't actually be in, the warm,
Yeah.
the warmth of
The sunshine.
the sunshine, but
Yeah.
just surrounding yourself with nature, whether that be just with your visualizations of pictures on the wall, and with the screen, or actually having plants in your
That's a
home.
great idea. Yeah. We had something like, I can't remember the number of days, but it apparently the news says we just had the darkest winter in Ontario in
Oh,
like
the news.
forever. Right. And I'm like, I believe you. This is the first time ever. But I believe you. Like it was so dark and so gloomy. And there would be weeks and weeks where the sun did not shine here.
Mm.
And it was snowing and cold. And people are freaking miserable, like miserable. And the minute you can see it at the bus stop, like the minute the sun comes out and all the moms and dads walk out and they're like, hey, hey. But in the winter, we're all like, don't talk to me. Like, don't look at me. Don't talk to me. I'm freezing. So I like this idea. I like this idea of doing more like visualization of nature and things when we're maybe a little bit more like cooped up in the colder months. I can
Mhm.
see how that would be incredibly beneficial.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And meditation, like I'll just go into that as well. Like that is I'm a huge component of meditation because of the benefits of your mind.
Mhm.
Basically what I was saying is like your mind doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is not. So if
Right.
you are putting yourself in a state of meditation where you are visualizing how you want to feel, or visualizing what it is that you are calling into your life, or maybe just an intuitive hit, this tool will transform your emotional state, right?
Mhm.
It's your emotional state, your aura, which is then like we're talking about is going to send different chemical messages and different chemical neurotransmitters to your body. So if you're practicing changing your emotional state with meditation, and like it compounds, right? Then that's going to be so much easier for you to access that state again if you are going through maybe a triggering moment, because you know how to come back to your normal or your I want to say, yeah, it because if you're doing it on a daily practice, it's going to be maybe that normal calibration of emotional state that you're going to be going to, and you're going to want to go back to it uh,
Right.
because that's what's familiar and that's what feels good.
Right. I feel like I can hear some questions
Okay.
coming in through the listeners. While you're talking about visualization, I'm like, this is such a beautiful opportunity. And from what I've learned through my experience with human design, I know that I am an unspecific manifester. And for me, feeling and visualizing what I want to manifest is better than me like writing it down and just being in that space. It's better for me to actually feel, how will I feel when XYZ happens. So
Yeah.
it's something I always, every time I do something for myself, I'm always like, how can I bring this back to my community? And I can
Mm.
hear people asking the question around, how can I visualize the life that I desire, AKA being a mom, being pregnant, having a baby, without it being triggering to me? Like, how would you walk a client through using visualization in the fertility space if that feels difficult for them to actually visualize? Do you understand where I'm going?
Yeah, I do. I think I see what you're trying to say. So it's coming out of, or maybe it's even just allowing yourself to feel what comes up, right? Because
Right.
if it's triggering, then there's something that you're maybe attached to, something that you're tied to, an outcome that you're tied to. But that's kind of the process of life, is that we don't know. It is an unknown, but what we can control is what we can control, and that's our emotional state.
Right.
That's our thoughts. That's our feelings and our actions. So if we are taking um our power back and our control in that space and empowering ourselves there, then that's only going to benefit, the outcome of what does happen, in the future. We're not going to know the how, we're not going to know how it happens or what happens, but if we're just present in that moment of allowing ourselves to control what we control, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, then we can learn, then we can
Yeah.
grow, then we can evolve, then we can heal.
And I'd love to even take that like one micro step back and say, your version of control may just be that one tiny step that you're making to help process. Not
Yeah.
necessarily that after you listen to this, you're like, okay, I now control the way I feel and think and act in every scenario, because that's not realistic. But what you do control is having the intention to work on it, having
Yeah.
the intention
Mhm.
to make those micro movements. And I think when we
Mhm.
break it down into that simple aspect of like, you're not going to be good at something right away.
Yeah.
I just talked about this on my stories last night about
Mhm.
how I hate being bad at things. Like, I have to be good at everything. But the reality is like, just like you'd all of a sudden deciding that you want to play a sport for the first time, working on your emotional regulation and processing your emotions and your mindset work, like, this takes practice.
Yes.
It's not comfortable in the beginning. And
Mhm.
the intention of, I'm going to try this on for size and see how it feels, that's the first and probably most important step of you taking that control back and continuing to live in this like comfortable yet uncomfortable state is only holding you back from moving forward, right?
Yeah, I love how you said intention. I think that is like the secret sauce to everything is living with intention. And if you are aligned with your values and you have intention there, and like you're saying, you're just taking the first step towards what it is that you want, that emotional state that you want, the healthy coping mechanisms that you want, diving into your triggers, because yes, they are uncomfortable, but that's the freedom on the other side as well,
Yeah.
right? So that intention is key.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you had to pick one modality that you work with and you could only work with that one moving forward, what would you
Oh my gosh, one. Yeah, I like how you said that. Just everyone is different. There's so many tools and techniques out there, and it's really just finding the one that resonates with you.
Mhm.
For me, it's meditation, hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you make some beautiful meditations for us in FCM. So
Oh,
I can
thank you. Yes, I love meditation.
Oh, yeah. And everyone's always seeking them out. They're like, where are they? I'm like, if they're coming. Amazing. Okay. As we wrap up here, Haunani, this was such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Oh,
What
absolutely.
is one fertility tip that you would love to leave for our audience?
Oh gosh, yes. Okay, so one fertility tip, cycle sync. I mean, learn your cycles, learn your cycle as a woman, because we are very different than men. Like, you can't be looking at the energy of a man and comparing yourself. It's learning your own hormone cycle as a woman, and that has been life-changing for me, is
Yeah.
cycle syncing. Yeah.
Amazing. Me too. Yeah. Me too. Lots of updates coming for FCM all around cycle syncing in the next couple of weeks. So
Yay.
it's going to be exciting.
Oh, that is exciting.
Yeah. How can people find you and hear your wisdom?
Oh, okay, you can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. My name on there is Haunani Wildflower.
Cool.
You
I'll put
can
the show
find
notes.
me in FCM.
Yeah.
Come and join us in FCM. I do mindset coaching pretty much every week, and we drop mindset tools and techniques all the time. You can also check out my website at www.haunaniholistics.com.
Amazing. And I'll make sure that's linked in the show notes for everybody. Thank you so, so much. Thanks for coming.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.